And I think the Browns have probably, in Kevin's year-end review that he does with his, at this point, I would imagine he did it with Deep Podesta, some of those overlooking the offense. Like, guys, we are in 2nd and 11 plus way too often. Like, we have to rewrite how we do this stuff. So, one 10-yard run that gets you out to your own 33-yard line, but then the next play is a -2, and then you're 2nd and 12, you're in 3rd and 8, and then you're punting. And it's like, well, that looks like a nice, you got a 10-plus yard run there, and you may add those up over the course of a game, and you had 5 10-yard runs, and you're like, all right, that's great. No, because that's not run game efficiency, right? Joe Thomas had the famous quote 7 years ago now. He's talking to the media about, like, if you run, -1, 0, 1, 2, -3, 4, 75, your yards per carry might look great.
Yes. Yep. Thank you for saying that.
You hit a 75-yard, but that's not the same as being able to run consistently for 4, 5, 6, 5, 4. Those are how drives are built, because as a play caller, man, 2nd and 5, 2nd and 3, those are the whole thing is open here. The whole thing is open. So I need the Browns to figure out ways to create cheap and easy yards. And when you're in 3rd and shorts, you have enough answers that it's not like, you guys probably would agree with me. You're like, my shirt collar's tight around my neck. They can't get these plays that they should get, right? Like, think back to the Seattle game where they're throwing it off Jamal Adams' helmet, right? That's like a 3rd and 1. Guys, we got to be able to run some different schemes here, some different things they're not expecting that are still part of our baseline system here. Can we hit a fly sweep to somebody for 3 yards, just running lateral because they're not expecting it? Can we fake a fly sweep and run up inside of that expanding edge and walk up safety to get 3 or 4 yards? It just was too difficult. It's been turning too difficult to do the little things and create 3 or 4 yards. So I think that efficiency aspect is what they're looking to improve.
I mean, I did an episode breaking down the positional, units of the Browns. And when I got to Jerome Ford in the running back section, and I looked at his total carries, his total yards and everything, I think his yards per carry on the season was like 4.6. And everybody's like, oh, he had a great yards, but it's 4.6. It's not bad. He had 8, I believe it was 8 runs over the whole season, just 8 that were over 20 yards or more. And if you take out those 8 runs out of his like 200 carries, his average dropped down to 2 or like 1.8.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like Jerome. I think he's a fine player. I think that you can only, again, when you watch Nick for 5 years, it creates like I don't even know what the right stubbornness, like, why isn't this play going? Well, listen, I could pull up 25 Nick Chubb runs and tell you why this play should be dead right there, right there, right there. It should have been 3 yards. It turns into 37. Should have been -1, turns into 12. Should have been 17, turns into 65. Like, he is special. And it's hard then to go back and watch somebody like a Jerome Ford, who's fine, but you're like, God, this guy kind of stinks, right? Like, but I think that what the Browns weren't doing their running backs any favors. And I don't think they had the best collective effort up front. Obviously, the 2 tackles that they had to, like, DeWand, we like him a lot. I think all of us do. Not a refined run game blocker. Was not very good last year in that phase. And that's okay. You can live in the NFL if you're a great pass protecting tackle and you're sort of a marginal run blocker. DeWand, just enough times he just overwhelms you with his sheer size that he gets away with some things. But, like, I don't think that they were great up front. I think that they were also playing defenses who had a very keen feel for, like, 3rd and 6, what are they going to do? Oh, I know what they like to run here. They're going to run boundary pin pull. Like, that's what they like. Oh, where's the running back lined up? Kind of maybe 2 schemes they can run here. Like, the defenses had a really good feel for how they were running the football. So I don't think they did them any favors there. I'm actually really interested to watch Jerome, and some of the, and maybe they draft a guy too here, and some of the varied stuff that they can put out there this year, because I don't think they did him any favors. And I think you guys would agree with me. I'm not sure Jerome mentally was, like, prepared for that. All of a sudden, Nick has this horrendous injury, and it's like, oh, hey, you're going to be a 200 carry guy for us out of nowhere. Yeah. So he's got to get his big boy pants on this offseason. I'm sure he's working on that. And some of these other guys, it's a good opportunity for a lot of these guys now to make an imprint, because it's uncertain if Nick will really be back in a meaningful way this year, at least until midseason.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned, or I'm sorry, man. You mentioned running backs in the draft. I might as well just hit that real quick. Have you been doing any draft prep scouting on any of these running backs, or is there a guy you feel like would fit, or two or three names that would fit what you project the Browns to be moving toward this year?
Sure. I mean, listen, I've got a couple kids now, so my scouting time is not great.
Get it, man. Get it.
Yeah. I can't grind tape from midnight to 2 when you got a 1.5-year-old that's going to wake up and punch you in the face at 6 a.m. So
those are fun.
Those are fun.
I get it.
They're never ending. But I would say there's some guys that have been linked to the Browns that I think make sense. 54 to me, guys, is not a realistic player for the Browns to take a back. So you're talking about like 85, 156. So we could, like, if they're going early, a guy I would love is Trey Benson out of Florida State. I think he's got great contact balance, really nice downhill one-cut vision stuff, good burst, can be a nice part of the passing game. I think if they went like 85, or if they moved back, say, and gathered a pick or two from 54 and whatever, he's a name early. You're talking like mid 156, or if they move up from 156 to like 120 because of a trade scenario, like Audric Estime out of Notre Dame. I know he didn't run as fast as everybody wanted him to at the combine, but he had a much better session at his pro day. Young, 20 years old still, like a lot of the boxes that they check, and he's really good at creating yards that are not supposed to be created. So I think I love to look for running backs as yards over expectation, and he's a really nice player in that regard. He's a big body guy, but he also plays in a way that is less contact driven. So ability to shift the hips quick, kind of like not take the brunt of hits. But I think he's got that middle round a really nice influx of like concepts of the Browns. And obviously Tommy Rees knows him, right? He's just one grade of separation away. Rees went to Alabama for a year, but there's a connection there too. And then if you're late, the kid I like out of Troy is Kamani Vidal. It was a not a very popular name, but if they go in the 200s, he could last to the 200s. And I think Vidal is a fun football player, kind of like not as fast as Keaton Mitchell, the kid I liked out of East Carolina last year, is unfortunately in Baltimore, but really, I mean, the thing hips are shift, very quick in and out of cuts, can sink the hips, can read process, not as effective as a pass blocker, because that, again, you're talking about guys getting into the 200s, not a complete player, but a really nice change of pace back. And I find him to be an interesting prospect that they could be drawn to, just because the testing stuff looks really good, very athletic, and he produced really well at the college level. And that's a huge thing. If you don't produce in college, it's kind of like you're going to produce in the NFL. So right. I think he checks a lot of boxes for them. So those are kind of like an early name I'm drawn to. And I think Benson has been mocked to them a few times because I think that's low-hanging fruit for people looking at the roster. I'm not sure they're driven to take it back, though, guys. I mean, I think they like Ford. I think they like Hines, giving them some change of pace, some receiving options. And then, I mean, Deontay Foreman is perpetually slept on, a guy who just continues to create when he's on the football field. So there's a possibility they don't add anybody there unless they just are in love with a player. And I think that I'm drawn to, as you only have 6 picks now, and 3 of those picks are 200 plus, is like being a player in the running back UDFA market, like a real player, right? Like the last time the Browns got heavily involved on a real player was like Dontrell Hilliard, who I think Dontrell Hilliard turned into a really nice player. Unfortunately, that didn't totally materialize here, more in Tennessee. But I think like last year I was, again, just like Keaton Mitchell was sitting there. I'm like, what are we missing here? Like they should be a real player in that UDFA market if they don't draft a guy, because I think there'll be some talent and opportunity to collect somebody there that could find a role, even with Nick coming back, that could find a role. So it's opportunity to be found there. I think it's like, hey man, going after UDFA defensive tackles, probably not going to bear much fruit, but I think there's a higher potential there to see a running back materialize into something than that. So hopefully we see them get a little more aggressive there as they're trying to fix that hole in this situation.